Hey everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV. I'm Paul Machin. So we know now that Michael Edwards has formally announced his decision to step down as Director of Football at Liverpool Football Club. He will be replaced by Assistant Director of Football, Julian Ward. But who is Julian Ward? Now, I've got a show each and every week on Redmen Plus with Goal.com's Neil Jones called Journo Insight. And this week, I sat down with him to get a little bit of insight on the future Director of Football of Liverpool Football Club, Julian Ward. Take a look at this. What do you know about Julian Ward then?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. Yeah, I mean, he's someone I've known for many years, predating his time at Liverpool. So he's an interesting story as much as anything. So he's a former pro footballer, played at Morecambe, born on Merseyside, but not really raised on Merseyside, if you like. Or if you speak to him, he's not a Scouser, but he's sort of Warrington-y type of accent.
He's a Wool, that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, yeah, but
hey, listen,
you could confuse him if you were from Kent. You could confuse him as sort of a Scouser type of thing. That kind of go. I never would. Yeah, and he'd laugh if he heard me say that. But he had that. He was a sports science graduate, so he went down that road. He played a lot in Northern Ireland for Larne, Lisbon Distillery. So he was a pro, but with a sports science background. And then through contacts, I'm guessing, through a little bit of opportunity, he ends up working for the Portuguese FA. And I've got a great story. He's told me a great story himself about at the 2010 World Cup that he was he's an opposition analyst. He was a scouting coordinator for the Portuguese national side under Carlos Queiroz, who I think is someone he's had a good working relationship down the years. And he was working in the 2010 World Cup, and there'd be times where we need a body for the training drill. Julian, you're gonna have to go right back up against Cristiano. Don't have to tackle him, but and he said I can remember him telling me these things. Some days it'd be Nani, some days it'd be Ricardo Quaresma, some days it'd be Cristiano Ronaldo, and he's just there doing shadow play. And this is the scout. But to go from there to where he's at now is incredible, isn't it? To think he was at Manchester City when they won the Premier League title. I think one of the big signings that he was involved in at City was Edin Dzeko when he went there, because I think he'd done a lot of work on Dzeko for Portugal. I think Portugal played Bosnia in the to qualify for that World Cup. And then he comes to Liverpool, courtesy of Dave Fallows and Barry Hunter. He was on their team. He was one of their guys. I think Dave Fallows is pretty much his what's the word? His guru, if you like, in football, and took him to Liverpool, and he's worked his way up through there and very successful with the loans system, loan department. You think of, I mentioned a few players earlier, but Ruben Brewster, Harry Wilson, Teo, who's banging in goals over in the Bundesliga at the moment, Ryan Kent. A lot of players that Liverpool have made good money on. Danny Ward, another one. Yeah, Liverpool made good money on through not discarding too early and keeping around them. It doesn't always work. There's some that slip through the net, and there's some that are still hanging around like Shea Ojo, and you think, what's the future going to hold for these? But more often than not, Liverpool have got that right. And then obviously he was promoted last November, December into the assistant sporting director role, and now he gets the chance. I think it's a big step for him, and I think it's one that he'll be very much aware of. That we're talking about him on a show now. We don't do that really generally. You might get a passing mention in a loan article or something like that. Now people are going to know his face. People are going to know his name. People are going to be asking, well, what's he doing? What's he getting right? What's he getting wrong? So he knows it's a big step. But I think if you looked at his career, there's a lot going for him in terms of being able to handle that. He's got a very good relationship with agents. I know that from speaking to agents. He had the role to play in Fabinho's signing, had a big role to play in Diogo Jota. Firmino, going back years, I think a lot of good contacts, South American, Portuguese speaking contacts.
I was going to say, there's the Portuguese.
Yeah, I think Thiago, I think he had a big, not a big role, but he had a role to play in that deal. I think he's respected, he's young, he's someone who's got a mentality or a reputation as being, open-minded, modern. He's not a sort of, an old school football person in that regard. He's open to data and things like that. So I think he fits the bill for Liverpool. But listen, the proof will always be in the pudding, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But he's got a lot of big decisions coming his way in the next 12, 24, 48 months.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your general sense on it then? You feeling okay? Because again, I think you can be cynical about these things, and no doubt that exists in social media more than most places, of course. But I thought there was enough personality in Michael Edwards' letter that I felt the assurance that I was looking for from it, because of those personal touches. Because you don't need to say all that.
Yeah. Especially when you're not known for that. It wouldn't have stood out if Michael Edwards' statement was very dry, would it? And just, I've had a great time, now I feel it's time for a new challenge, blah, blah, blah. No one would have said, that's a bit unusual for Michael Edwards. He doesn't seem himself there. You would have obviously, got away with that, if you like. I agree. I think you can take that at face value. The idea that I always wanted to limit it to 10 years, and I think change is good for an organisation, and maybe he's got itchy feet to sort of look and challenge himself elsewhere. He's still pretty young in football terms, 42. There's lots and lots to do that, and in a strange way, a little bit like a Klopp or a Carragher or a Gerrard. Do you want to hang on and get to a stage where you're only chipping away at your legacy, or that kind of thing? Leave them wanting more a little bit when you leave. So I do think that is reassurance. I think is a good word that you use there. That it's not a crumbling of the empire type of situation. It's more just a gradual change and something that maybe benefits the individual in this instance, rather than it's not a sort of force him out the door and let's just put a nice message up there and put a brave front on. I think it is actually a Michael Edwards decision.
Well, when you look at what's happening in other football clubs, and obviously this largely relates to like managers and what have you, but we've seen a number of managers sacked in the last 12 months, and then they begin the search.
Yeah.
It's whether it works or not, the fact that if we think Edwards is as good as he is, the fact that he's been hands-on with his successor, and again, he's not something being forced out the door, because you see that in big business all the time. So it's like randomly, my sister-in-law worked for the BBC for years. You basically train up your replacements. It's like digging your own grave, and then getting pushed into it at the end. But that leads to lots of resentment and maybe people holding on to things and not being natural handovers. Whereas this does feel like if you're going to pass the baton.
I really do need to make that point quite strongly, actually, that they are close. Michael Edwards and Julian Ward are close, as in they are. So when Liverpool won the league, that night they were together in Julian's home. Like watching that happen and making sure that was celebrated together. That team was together. It's not this isn't a sort of Julian wasn't dropped on Michael Edwards and told you've got a new guy working underneath you now. Like make him feel welcome and see what you can do. They are a team, or part of, certainly two big parts of the same team. They were together yesterday, funny enough, at a sports conference down at Twickenham. I wonder what that train journey was like, sort of thing, when that statement, they would have probably been on the train around the time.
What's the email password?
Yeah. Have you seen this? But so they are close. I think there's a personal element to it. I think there's, we probably do sometimes, because we don't work in that world, we do sort of put it on this level of they are probably just sitting there in suits and ties, very serious and doing their own work, and and it's all very formulaic. It's obviously not like that. I think it's a lot more informal, a lot more fun. I would imagine they will have travelled across the world. Let me tell you, they will have travelled across the world, getting themselves in some mad situations, some high pressure, high stakes situations, but some funny ones as well. I mean, I have heard some stories about them, being on mad flights and having to sort of deal with crazy football directors and agents and that kind of thing. They will have shared a lot of character forming sort of experiences, and so I think that will really help this process. It's not a case of a new guy being parachuted in. It's not a case of then, like you say, a search beginning now, and then all of a sudden you've got everyone putting their hat into the ring and saying, "Oh, I can do this," or "I can revolutionise this." They know what they need to do. They know that the person who's taken over knows what's expected of them, and they also know that all of the key people, Jurgen Klopp, Mike Gordon, all those guys I mentioned, Dave Fallows, Barry Hunter, whoever, they all have a relationship with the new guy. Maybe it'll change. Maybe that will have to change. But for the time being, it should be a smooth transition. I said the question obviously comes once the work begins, if you like, and then the decisions have to be made.
So there you have it. More on that and on Steven Gerrard's appointment and what that could mean for the next big decision for Julian Ward. Streaming right now, Journo Insight on Redmen Plus, the redmentv.com. Click that button, get there and use the code Redmen Plus to get a completely free month to check it all out.